Welcome! Thanks for tuning in. Let's explore an interesting story in the contract law together. In contract law, a legally binding agreement does not arise automatically. It is formed only when several essential elements are present, beginning with an offer and followed by acceptance. An offer refers to a clear expression of willingness by one party to be legally bound by specific terms, once those terms are accepted by another party. Offers may be made to a particular individuals or in certain circumstances to the public at large. Once valid offer exists, the next crucial element is acceptance, which signifies agreement to the terms of the offer. This video will examine the concept of acceptance and its significance to the formation of contracts. In contract law, acceptance is the act by which a person agrees to the terms of an offer. Section 2, subsection B of the Contract Act 1950 provides when the person to whom the proposal is made signifies his assent. Thereto, the proposal is said to be accepted. The person who accepts is called the promisee or acceptor. Among the characteristics of an acceptance, it must be communicate. The word signifies in Section 2, subsection B of the Contract Act 1950 shows the requirement of communication of acceptance. This is also supported by the terms expressed in Section 7, subsection B in the Contract Act 1950. The section provides that in order to convert a proposal into a promise, the acceptance must be expressed in some usual and reasonable manner. In order to amount an acceptance, it must be communicated, and silence does not amount the acceptance. To see how this principle works in the practice, let's explore how acceptance was applied in the famous Khalil against Kabalik Smoke Bowl Company case.
In this case, Mrs. Khalil is the plaintiff and the Kabalik Smoke Bowl Company is the defendant. The case of Khalil against Kabalik Smoke Bowl Company took place during a period when influenza was affecting a large number of people. Daily life was filled with caution as everyone tried to stay healthy. During this time of concern, individuals were actively seeking ways to protect themselves from the disease. Worried about the spread of influenza, Mrs. Khalil sought a way to safeguard her health. She came across an advertisement in the Gazette placed by the Kabalik Smoke Bowl Company, which claimed that the smoke ball could cure influenza, cough, colds, and other illnesses. In the advertisement, the defendant promised to pay £100 to anyone who used the product exactly as instructed and still contracted influenza. To prove its sincerity, the company even claimed that it had deposited £1,000 in the Alliance Bank to demonstrate that it was genuine and committed to paying the reward. The plaintiff, Mrs. Khalil, upon seeing the advertisement, purchased the medicine from her local chemist and used it 3 times daily for 2 weeks, exactly as instructed by the company. However, despite her careful use of the product, one morning she woke up feeling unwell and experiencing a headache, a runny nose, and other symptoms of influenza. Mrs. Khalil believed that she was entitled to the reward promised in the company's advertisement. She then wrote to the Kabalik Smoke Bowl Company to claim the £100 reward. The company, however, refused to pay, arguing that there was no communication of acceptance of the offer by the offeree and therefore no binding contract existed. As a result, Mrs. Khalil brought the matter to court, raising the issue of whether her compliance with all the instructions stated in the advertisement could constitute a valid acceptance and thus establishing a binding contractual obligation.
At this point, an important question arises. The central issue is whether a legally binding contract was formed between the plaintiff, Mrs. Khalil, and the defendant, the Kabalik Smoke Bowl Company. This is because Mrs. Khalil performed the acts specified in the advertisement without communicating her acceptance to the company beforehand. The primary legal question, therefore, is whether her actions alone carrying out all the conditions stated in the advertisement can constitute valid acceptance sufficient to create a legally binding contractual relationship between the parties under the principle of contract law. In particular, the court had to consider whether, under the rules governing unilateral contracts, perform of an act specified in the offer made to the public at large can amount to enforceable acceptance.
Definition of acceptance. A contract is said to be completed when the party provides its assent or acceptance to it. A contract is said to be complete when it comes to knowledge of other party. The communication of acceptance has to be provided by the offeree to the offerer in contract. Nevertheless, there are exceptions to this rule. In this case of general offer, the communication are not required. A general offer is also known as a unilateral contract. It's an offer made to the public at large where communication of acceptance is not required. General offer often require acceptance by performance. In other words, the act itself can count as acceptance without the need to notify the offerer.
In this case, the defendant argued that although the advertisement was intended to promote sales, the key issue was that Mrs. Khalil had used the medicine privately, which did not demonstrate that she had followed the company's instruction. And since there was no communication of acceptance to the company, no contract could be said to exist. They also claimed that even if a contract did exist, it would be a wagering in nature. In reply to the defendant's argument, the plaintiff argued that the advertisement by the company was not merely a marketing strategy to boost sales, but demonstrated the company's genuine intention to enter into a contract, as evidenced by the deposit of £1,000 in the Alliance Bank as proof of their commitment. Furthermore, Mrs. Khalil had used the medicine strictly according to the instruction provided by the company, yet she still contracted influenza, entitling her to the promised reward. With both sides presenting their arguments, the court had to consider whether performing the conditions of a general offer without communicating acceptance could constitute a valid and enforceable contract. Justice Linley held the opinion that there was no requirement for communication in this case because the advertisement constituted a general offer. He explained that although acceptance usually requires communication, this case fell under an exception as the performance of the act itself amounts to acceptance in a general offer. For this reason, the defendant's argument was considered vague. Justice Bowen added that anyone who fulfills the condition of a general offer is deemed to have accepted it, so special notification of acceptance is not required. The court therefore ruled in favour of the plaintiff and dismissed the defendant's appeal, holding that Mrs. Khalil was entitled to the promised reward. The case of Khalil against Kabalit Smoke Ball Company is frequently cited in contract law for illustrating the principles of acceptance, particularly in unilateral contracts. The Court of Appeal rejected all the arguments presented by the defendant and held that Mrs. Khalil's claim for £100 as a reward was valid. The court confirmed that a fully binding contract existed between the parties, even though there was no communication of acceptance. It was clear that the company had serious intentions to enter into contract, as evidenced by the £1,000 deposit in the Alliance Bank. Accordingly, the court ruled that Mrs. Khalil was entitled to be compensated as stated in the advertisement, receiving £100 for the inconvenience she had suffered. In our opinion, we conclude that the judgment in Khalil against Kabalit Smoke Ball Company was fair and legally justified. Mrs. Khalil was entitled to compensation because the company had made a clear and serious offer to the public. Even though no direct communication of acceptance was given, the law recognized that fulfilling the conditions of the offer is enough to show acceptance. With that, we conclude our group presentation on acceptance in contracts. Thank you for watching, and that's all from us.